What could terrorists do to us that we don't do to ourselves? Asked K. Pete over at Democratic Underground. This was actually on Tuesday. C-SPAN was asking people, how concerned are you about a potential terrorist attack in the United States? And a fellow by the name of Robert Walker responded to C-SPAN on their website. He said, terrorists? We had somebody walk into a school and kill 20 little kids and we did nothing about it. What could terrorists do to us that we don't do to ourselves? That's a damn good question. Meanwhile, there's in the continuing idiotic, frantic, pump up the rubes hysteria category, Fox So-Called News, right-wing hate radio continue to pound on the idea that if Syrian refugees come into the United States, they're going to be among them terrorists who are going to blow us up and kill us all, right? This is just, and they have now identified, by the way, in fact, they're pretty sure they've identified all of the people who shot up Paris a couple days ago on Friday night. And they were all Europeans. Now, a few of them had been to Syria, but they were all Europeans. But that doesn't stop the hysteria. And just this idea, I mean, just consider this. This is about as stupid as, Bobby Jindal and Scott Walker and Ted Cruz and, the bunch of them saying, global warming isn't real, evolution didn't happen, the world is 6,000 years old, the solar system's at the center of the universe. Evolution doesn't happen, therefore we don't need antibiotics anymore. Whatever. It's like all the Republican stupidity. This is at the top of the list. To become a refugee, to achieve refugee status in the United States, first you have to go through the United Nations refugee process where you get vetted, and then you have to go through the United States refugee process where you get vetted. It can take 18 months. It's painful. It's difficult. You end up in refugee camps or stuck in countries where you don't want to be, where you're out in the cold in the winter and the hot in the sun. It's anybody who seriously wants to come to this country and hurt us, and there are people out there who want to do that, they're not gonna say, hey, I think I'll become a refugee and I'll work my ass off for 18 months to get to the United States. No. ISIS has got money. Or Daesh, I guess we should call them now. They got plenty of money. Al-Qaeda's got plenty of money. What do? They'll do the exact same thing that the 9/11 hijackers did. They'll get a tourist visa or a student visa, and they'll buy a first-class ticket and fly over here. 40% of all the people in the United States who are quote illegal immigrants, 40% of them, 4 out of 10, 2 out of 5. Are people who came in on student visas or tourist visas and just overstayed their visas. It's the vast majority of them. But anyhow, the whole point is that only an idiot would think that, bringing refugees into the United States is going to open the door to terrorists. The open door to terrorists is called the visitor visa program, right? We've got. You got 1 million people a day coming through this country. In all probability, I don't know the exact number, but tens of millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of tourists visit this country every year. Probably tens of millions. Lots and lots of people. But that's not stopping the House Republicans, who really think that, because their agenda is purely economic. Really, the House Republicans and the Senate the Republican Party nowadays, their agenda is to shill for the billionaires and the transnational corporations. Full stop. That's it. That's what they do. But in order to do that, in order to shill for the billionaires, they've got to get the suckers to vote for them. Or to vote for their hand-picked candidates. The Koch brothers and all these other billionaires, they've got to get the rubes out there, the Republican voters, the so-called base. They've got to get them to vote for politicians who will, throw them a bone and then do what the billionaires want. cut their taxes, reduce their regulations, make their businesses more profitable, let them keep their money offshore, all that kind of stuff. Right? I mean, it's really an economic agenda. But you got to bring in the rubes. You got to scare the hell out of the rubes, out of the suckers. And so they're doing it in the House. Speaker Ryan, what a surprise, Paul Ryan. He's pushing this, they call it the American Safe Act. And it requires that Homeland Security, the FBI, and the intelligence community have to sign off on every single Syrian refugee that President Obama wants to bring into the U.S. It'll just, slow the process down somewhat. There's already, as I said, a substantial vetting process. I mean, this is bizarre. This is like, oh, we're so frightened. It's a variation on the. We're so frightened of those evil people in Guantanamo. They're like Lex Luthor. They're like Superman. We don't have any kryptonite. You can't bring them to the United States. Our prisons aren't strong enough for them. They're Supermen. Don't you know? George Bush told us that. And these, this 5-year-old refugee from Syria with her mom who's just totally freaked out and shell-shocked, she might turn into a guy. In fact, on Drudge last night, one of the headlines said something like, Obama to ask for 10,000 more refugees. And then Obama says, why are you afraid of women and children? And then the line underneath it was, woman suicide bomber blows herself up in Paris. It was the woman who was the wife or companion of the guy who put together the Paris attacks. In other words, implying that, just because it's women and children doesn't mean we shouldn't be scared. President Obama had something to say about these pathetic little whining cowards. My words, not his. Here's what he had to say.
These are the same folks oftentimes who suggest that they're so tough that just talking to Putin or staring down ISIL or using some additional rhetoric somehow is going to solve the problems out there. But apparently they're scared of widows and orphans coming into the United States of America as part of our tradition of compassion. First they were worried about the press being too tough on them during debates. Now they're worried about 3-year-old orphans. That doesn't sound very tough to me.
These Republicans, they're tough guys. They're going to keep those 3-year-old orphans out, and they're going to beat up those people, those nasty people from the press. They're going to whine and complain about it. And Chris Christie yesterday said he doesn't care if the orphans are, having bullets fired at them. He doesn't want them in the United States. Right. I mean, this is really tragic. Jay Inslee sent out an email to, he's the governor of Washington State, former congressman. Louise and I had lunch or dinner with him once, years ago. The only time I've ever met him. Very nice guy. He says, our hearts are heavy this week as we think of the lives lost to the barbaric acts committed in Paris and Beirut last week. Our response as a state, this is Washington State, to these tragic events cannot be to cower to fear and division. Washington will continue to be a state that welcomes those seeking refuge from war, terror, and persecution, regardless of where they are from and regardless of which religion they practice. More than half the nation's governors say it's time to close our door to Syrian refugees whose lives are in peril. I say it's never been more important to stand for our Washington State values of compassion and inclusion. After the U.S. State Department robustly screens and evaluates families who seek refugee status, Washington will continue to be a state that welcomes those seeking refuge. These are our values. This is what I stand for, and this is what the state of Washington stands for. Governor Jay Inslee. To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here, and please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.